Bill Russell affected games. You couldn't get a shot near the basket.
I know.
He terrorized everybody for 13 years. When I was training Andrew Bynum, I told him, look, just go. There's on Facebook. Watch Bill Russell block art. That's all you have to know about how to play defense.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar didn't choose favorites lightly. Over 20 seasons, 6 championships, and a career built on discipline and longevity, his standard for greatness was never about hype or highlights. It was about impact, intelligence, and how a player elevated the game beyond themselves. Kareem played against multiple eras of stars. He battled dominant centers, shared the floor with transcendent guards, and watched the league evolve from physical interior wars to perimeter-driven offenses. From that vantage point, his appreciation wasn't based on popularity or scoring totals alone. It was rooted in fundamentals, leadership, and basketball understanding. The players on this list weren't just great at what they did. They reshaped roles, set standards, and forced the league to adapt. Some were teammates who unlocked new dimensions of his career. Others were rivals whose excellence demanded respect, even in competition. A few transcended position and ERA altogether. This isn't a list driven by nostalgia. It's a basketball mind recognizing other basketball minds. These are the 7 players Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has consistently spoken about with admiration. Not just for how they played, but for what they meant to the game when it mattered most. Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson sits at the center of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's basketball world, not just as a teammate, but as the player who extended, stabilized, and ultimately redefined the final act of Kareem's career. When Magic entered the league in 1979, Kareem was already an established legend, a 6-time MVP, multiple-time champion, and the most dominant big man of his era. What he needed at that stage wasn't validation. It was a partner who could carry responsibility without diminishing control. Magic provided exactly that. From the beginning, Kareem recognized Magic's rare understanding of the game. At 6 feet 9 inches, Magic didn't just run an offense, he orchestrated it. He saw angles before they developed, delivered the ball on time and on target, and understood how to maximize the center's strengths without forcing touches. For a player like Kareem, whose effectiveness relied on rhythm, spacing, and positioning, that vision mattered. The results were immediate and historic. As rookies together, they won the 1980 NBA championship. When Kareem went down with an ankle injury during the finals, Magic stepped in and delivered one of the most famous performances in league history. 42 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists in Game 6, playing center as a rookie to clinch the title. Kareem didn't see that as showmanship. He saw it as intelligence, adaptability, and accountability, traits he valued above all else. Over the next decade, their partnership became the foundation of the Lakers' dominance. Together, they won 5 championships: 1980, 1982, 1985, 1987, 1988. Magic's presence allowed Kareem to age gracefully without losing relevance. While Kareem remained elite into his late 30s, Magic absorbed the physical and creative burden of offense, keeping Kareem in positions where efficiency mattered more than volume. Kareem often emphasized that Magic didn't just pass. He understood timing. He knew when to feed the post, when to push tempo, and when to let Kareem conserve energy for closing stretches. That awareness extended beyond defense. Magic set the emotional tone of the team, handled media attention, and kept the locker room aligned. Responsibilities Kareem never wanted, but deeply respected. Their respect ran both ways. Magic frequently referred to Kareem as the smartest player he ever played with, praising his preparation and discipline. Kareem, in turn, credited Magic for making basketball joyful again late in his career, not through flash, but through shared purpose. When Kareem retired in 1989, it wasn't just the end of a career. It marked the closing chapter of one of the most successful duos the league has ever seen. And when Kareem speaks about Magic today, it's never with nostalgia alone. It's with precision. To Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson wasn't just a great teammate. He was proof that brilliance and selflessness could coexist at the highest level, and that true greatness often shows itself in how well you make others great. That's why Magic isn't just first on this list. He's foundational.
I went to visit Notre Dame. Notre Dame was really one of the top programs in the country at that time. I went, Bobby Knight came to my high school, went to North Carolina, so on and on. But I'm a mama's boy.
Bill Russell. Bill Russell represents something deeper to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar than rivalry, statistics, or even championships. To Kareem, Russell was the intellectual and moral blueprint for what greatness in basketball could look like. Before Kareem ever stepped onto an NBA floor, Russell had already defined the terms: 11 championships in 13 seasons, 5 MVPs, the defensive anchor of the most dominant dynasty in league history. But what separated Russell and Kareem's mind was never box scores. It was how he understood winning. Kareem has been consistent about this point for decades. Russell proved that dominance didn't require scoring dominance. At a time when stars were judged almost exclusively by points per game, Russell inverted the conversation. He controlled games through rebounding, rim protection, outlet passing, and defensive communication. Boston's offense flowed because Russell secured possessions. Their defense held because he erased mistakes before they became highlights. That approach resonated deeply with Kareem, especially as his own career matured. When Kareem entered the league in 1969, the center position was still defined by scoring output. Wilt Chamberlain had set that expectation. Kareem exceeded it early. Rookie of the Year, immediate MVP impact, unstoppable post efficiency. But as years passed, Kareem increasingly aligned with Russell's philosophy: winning first, numbers second. Kareem often pointed out that Russell understood leverage. He didn't contest every shot the same way. He didn't chase blocks for spectacle. He anticipated angles, forced misses, and initiated fast breaks with precision outlet passes. Those details don't dominate highlight reels, but they dominate outcomes. To Kareem, that was basketball intelligence at its highest level. Their relationship also extended beyond the court. Russell was one of the first superstar athletes to openly confront racial injustice while still in his prime. He endured hostility in Boston, stood with Muhammad Ali during the Vietnam era, and used his status to challenge the league's silence on civil rights. Kareem, who would later become one of the NBA's most articulate voices on social issues, viewed Russell as a model of integrity under pressure. That mattered. Kareem has said that Russell showed him how to be more than a player, how to carry principles without needing applause. Russell didn't soften his views for popularity. He didn't explain himself for comfort. He stood firm, even when it cost him public affection. Kareem followed that path in his own way, often citing Russell as someone who proved that intellectual independence and athletic greatness could coexist. From a basketball standpoint, Kareem also admired Russell's adaptability. Russell played in an era with limited spacing, fewer possessions, and physical constraints that demanded constant contact. Yet, he adjusted his role depending on what the team needed. Scorer when necessary, facilitator when possible, defensive eraser, always. That flexibility influenced how Kareem approached later stages of his career, especially during the Showtime Lakers years, when he deferred scoring load while remaining decisive. When people compare eras, Kareem is careful not to diminish Russell's impact by modern metrics. He rejects arguments that frame Russell as limited offensively. Instead, Kareem reframes the conversation. Russell didn't score because he didn't need to. The Celtics needed control, defense, and leadership. Russell delivered all three. That clarity impressed Kareem more than RAWTALENT ever could. When Kareem lists his favorite players, he isn't ranking skill packages. He's identifying players who understood why they played the way they did. Russell sits at the top of that category. To Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell wasn't just a winner. He was proof that basketball intelligence, discipline, and conviction could shape history, and that greatness is measured not by what you take from the game, but by how completely you control it.
You have no idea how proud I am of you. I couldn't be any more proud of you than I am of my own kids.
Bill Walton. Bill Walton is one of the most unexpected names on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's list, and that's exactly why Kareem's admiration for him matters. Walton didn't dominate the league for a decade. He didn't pile up championships year after year. He didn't define an era through volume scoring or longevity. In fact, compared to most all-time great centers, Walton's prime was painfully short, and yet Kareem consistently speaks about him with a level of respect usually reserved for players who reshaped basketball itself. That contrast is the point. Kareem never evaluated greatness purely by how long it lasted. He evaluated it by how deeply a player understood the game when they were healthy enough to play it. By that standard, Walton stood apart immediately. At his peak, Walton wasn't just the center anchoring the paint. He was the brain of an offense. During the 1976-77 season, Walton led the Portland Trail Blazers to their first championship. That team wasn't built on star isolation or overwhelming athleticism. It was built on movement, spacing, and decision-making, and everything ran through Walton. From the high post, he triggered cuts, hit weak-side shooters, and punished defensive overplays before they fully developed. Kareem noticed something critical in those games. Walton didn't wait for plays to break down. He prevented them from stalling in the first place. Statistically, Walton averaged 18.5 points, 14.4 rebounds, and 5 assists that season. Those numbers are solid, but they don't explain why Kareem respected him. What mattered more was how Portland's offense functioned when Walton touched the ball. Possessions sped up without becoming rushed. Defenses collapsed without chaos. Teammates moved with confidence because they knew the ball would arrive on time. For Kareem, that was rare. Centers were taught to finish, not facilitate. Walton rejected that limitation. He passed from angles most big men didn't even see. He set screens not to free himself, but to free others. And defensively, he played with anticipation rather than reaction, rotating early, taking away passing lanes, and controlling rebounding position before the shot even went up. In head-to-head matchups, Kareem felt that difference immediately. Walton didn't try to outmuscle him or race him down the floor. Instead, Walton forced Kareem to think earlier in possessions. He would show just enough resistance in the post to delay a move, then recover to contest without fouling. On offense, Walton often pulled Kareem away from the rim by initiating actions from the elbow, forcing Kareem to defend space rather than just the basket. That subtle shift changed how entire possessions unfolded. Kareem respected that kind of pressure more than brute force. Walton won the 1978 MVP despite missing games with foot injuries, which only reinforced Kareem's view. Walton controlled games even when he wasn't physically dominant every night. He shaped outcomes through positioning, timing, and communication, traits Kareem believed translated across eras. But the injuries mattered. More than fans often realize, Walton's physical breakdown represented something Kareem deeply understood and quietly feared: the fragility of greatness. Kareem built his career around durability, discipline, and preservation. Walton had the same basketball mind, but his body didn't cooperate. Kareem never held that against him. If anything, it intensified the respect. Walton became proof that brilliance alone isn't enough. Preparation, intelligence, and feel can take you to the top, but longevity requires physical fortune as well. Kareem saw in Walton a version of greatness that burned fast and bright, then disappeared before it could calcify into records and totals. Later, Walton reinvented himself as a key contributor on the 1985-86 Boston Celtics, one of the best teams ever assembled. Even in a reduced role, he defended, passed, and anchored lineups without ego. Kareem valued that adaptability. It showed Walton wasn't attached to status, only to winning. When Kareem evaluates players, he asks a different question than most fans. Did they organize the game or just overpower it? In Walton's case, the answer was clear. To Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton didn't dominate basketball through force or longevity. He dominated it through understanding. He didn't overwhelm defenses, he connected teammates, aligned possessions, and made the game function at a higher level. That kind of greatness doesn't last long, but it lasts forever in the minds of players who truly understand the game.
I left home 46 years ago, and I'm just still going, and I've never been busier, I've never been happier, and I haven't been this healthy since elementary school.
Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain is the one player on this list Kareem Abdul-Jabbar didn't admire automatically. That matters, because before Kareem ever won an MVP, before the skyhook became inevitable, Wilt had already defined what most people thought basketball dominance looked like: bigger, stronger, faster, record-breaking numbers that felt untouchable. For years, Wilt was the standard Kareem was expected to follow, and Kareem rejected it. From the beginning, Kareem didn't just play differently than Wilt, he disagreed with him. Not personally, but philosophically. Wilt represented raw physical superiority. Kareem believed greatness had to be repeatable, not overwhelming only when conditions were perfect. Kareem didn't trust dominance that relied solely on gifts you couldn't guarantee would hold up forever. That disagreement sat at the center of their relationship. Wilt could do things no center had ever done. Kareem acknowledged that, but he questioned how those things translated to sustained winning. Wilt's most famous seasons, 50 points per game, 100 in a night, didn't end with championships. Meanwhile, Wilt's most successful teams came later when he reduced scoring, focused on defense, rebounding and passing, and fit into a structured system. To Kareem, that wasn't coincidence. It was confirmation. Greatness, in Kareem's view, wasn't about how much you could do. It was about how well you understood when to do less. Their on-court overlap made that tension real. When Kareem entered the league in 1969, Wilt was aging, but still powerful. In the 1971 Western Conference Finals, Kareem's Bucks swept Wilt's Lakers on the way to a championship. Kareem averaged over 26 points and 17 rebounds, while Wilt was still physically imposing, but no longer the focal point. The balance of power was shifting, not through force, but through precision. A few years later, when Kareem joined the Lakers, the roles flipped. Wilt became a defensive anchor, rim protector, and rebounder. Kareem took over the offense. Kareem noticed something crucial in that transition. Wilt became most effective when he accepted structure. When he committed to screening, defending, and controlling space instead of chasing numbers, the Lakers won titles. That observation stayed with Kareem. It wasn't a criticism meant to diminish Wilt. It was a lesson. Wilt had the greatest physical ceiling the sport had ever seen, but his most reliable success came when his game aligned with team purpose. Kareem built his entire career around that alignment from day one. Over time, Kareem's respect for Wilt didn't soften. It sharpened. He acknowledged the pressure Wilt played under, the era, the expectations, the constant demand to prove dominance through statistics. Kareem understood how that environment pushed Wilt towards spectacle, but Kareem also believed Wilt eventually proved Kareem's philosophy right, not through records, but through adaptation. Wilt led the league in assists one season. He anchored elite defenses. He sacrificed scoring late in his career to win. Those weren't footnotes to Kareem. They were the moments Wilt met Kareem's standard. That's why Wilt's place on this list is different. Kareem didn't inherit admiration for Wilt Chamberlain. He arrived at it after questioning, competing, and watching Wilt evolve. Wilt showed what physical dominance could accomplish. Kareem showed what discipline and structure could sustain. Together, their contrast defined the center position and clarified exactly what Kareem believed greatness was meant to be. Oscar Robertson. Oscar Robertson represents the kind of greatness Kareem Abdul-Jabbar valued immediately, not because of aesthetics or mythology, but because of control, intelligence, and responsibility. When Kareem entered the league in 1969, Oscar was already a fully formed legend. He wasn't marketed as flashy. He wasn't built on spectacle. But every serious basketball mind understood his value. Oscar didn't just score or pass. He managed games. That distinction mattered to Kareem. Oscar was the first guard who truly controlled all 5 players on the floor. The triple-double season wasn't treated by Kareem as trivia or novelty. It was evidence of something deeper. Oscar saw the entire court, understood timing, and made decisions that stabilized teams under pressure. For Kareem, that was the highest form of basketball intelligence. Their partnership in Milwaukee confirmed it. When Kareem joined the Bucks, Oscar was the veteran presence who accelerated the franchise's rise. In 1971, the Bucks won the NBA championship, sweeping the Baltimore Bullets. Kareem was dominant, Finals MVP, interior anchor, offensive force, but Oscar was the organizer. He dictated tempo, prevented chaos, and ensured Kareem got the ball in positions that required minimal effort for maximum return. Kareem noticed how rare that was. Oscar didn't force offense. He didn't chase numbers. He picked moments. Against pressure, he slowed games down. Against mismatches, he attacked without overextending. Kareem often emphasized that Oscar understood pace better than almost anyone he'd ever played with. That understanding allowed Kareem to conserve energy, avoid unnecessary contact, and dominate late in games. Statistically, Oscar's impact was already historic. Career averages near 26 points, 9 assists, and 7 rebounds, elite efficiency, and consistent postseason performance. But Kareem wasn't impressed by totals alone. He respected how Oscar carried responsibility every possession. Misses didn't shake him. Defensive pressure didn't rush him. He played as if the game was unfolding exactly as expected, because often it was. That composure influenced Kareem directly. Kareem has spoken about how Oscar taught him that greatness didn't require urgency. It required clarity, knowing where teammates would be, knowing when a possession needed a basket, and when it simply needed control. Oscar embodied that mindset. Beyond the court, Kareem also admired Oscar's willingness to challenge systems. Oscar was outspoken about players' rights, free agency, and league power structures. His legal fight against the NBA helped reshape contract freedom, a change Kareem benefited from later in his own career. Kareem didn't separate basketball intelligence from personal integrity. Oscar had both. In Kareem's view, Oscar wasn't just a great guard. He was a standard setter, someone who showed that leadership didn't require volume and dominance didn't require spectacle. When Kareem evaluates players he truly admired, he looks for those who reduced uncertainty for everyone else on the floor. Oscar did that every night. To Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Oscar Robertson was proof that basketball mastery begins with understanding responsibility and ends with making the game easier for everyone who shares the floor with you. That's the kind of greatness Kareem never overlooked.
If a guy can play or he can't play. Legacy is after you're through with the game and gone, and look back on your career.
Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem Olajuwon is the rare player Kareem Abdul-Jabbar admired not just for what he did, but for how closely his game aligned with Kareem's own basketball philosophy. This wasn't admiration built on nostalgia or polite praise. It was recognition from one master technician to another. When Hakeem entered the league in 1984, Kareem was nearing the final phase of his career. He had already seen every type of center: brute force scorers, rim runners, rebound-only bigs, and physical enforcers. What immediately separated Hakeem was that his dominance wasn't borrowed from size alone. It was crafted. Footwork first, balance second, counters always ready. Kareem noticed that right away. Hakeem didn't rely on overpowering defenders, even though he was strong enough to do so. Like Kareem, he believed the most reliable weapon for a big man was repeatable skill: spins, up and unders, drop steps, pivot, and touch shots that didn't depend on athletic peaks. That mindset mirrored Kareem's own use of the skyhook, a move built to survive age, physical decline, and playoff scouting. From Kareem's perspective, Hakeem was the first center since himself who truly thought the game from the post outward rather than reacting possession by possession. The results validated that approach. During the 1994 and 1995 championship runs, Hakeem didn't just win titles. He systematically dismantled every archetype of elite big man. He outplayed Patrick Ewing in the finals. He neutralized David Robinson, the league MVP, in the Western Conference Finals. He controlled Shaquille O'Neal with positioning and timing rather than strength alone. For Kareem, that stretch wasn't just dominance. It was confirmation of a philosophy. Hakeem showed that preparation beats raw force when stakes rise. Defensively, Kareem valued Hakeem just as much. Hakeem wasn't a shot blocker chasing highlights. He anticipated angles. He defended without fouling. He guarded space as well as players. His ability to switch, recover, and protect the rim without breaking team structure stood out to Kareem, who always believed defense was about prevention, not reaction. Kareem often emphasized that Hakeem understood when to conserve energy, another shared trait. Hakeem didn't contest everything unnecessarily. He waited. He chose moments. That patience allowed him to remain effective late into games and deep into playoff runs. There was also respect in what Hakeem didn't chase. Hakeem never obsessed over being the league's loudest star. He didn't frame greatness around marketing or controversy. He focused on craft, discipline, and spiritual balance, elements Kareem appreciated deeply. Both men approached basketball as something closer to study than spectacle. Kareem has spoken openly about how Hakeem represented the evolution of the center position done correctly. Not faster for the sake of speed, not stronger for the sake of intimidation, but smarter, more adaptable, and more complete. It's no accident that younger big men still study Hakeem's footwork today, not because it looks impressive, but because it works under pressure. That durability of skill is what Kareem valued most. When Kareem evaluates players he truly admired, he looks for alignment between talent and understanding. Hakeem didn't just have tools, he knew why each one mattered. To Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Hakeem Olajuwon wasn't simply the best center of his era. He was proof that the principles Kareem built his career on, patience, preparation, and precision, could survive into the next generation and still dominate at the highest level. That kind of continuity earns the deepest respect.
Well, it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. Even when I was wearing Etonics with LA Gear, I have my own vision and creating my own signature shoe. But you can participate in the design, but it's different from where you have the total control of how you see it, from selecting the material, designing the sole, and really want to to test it and give you feedback and go back to the table and redesign till you get to where you see that this is the way I want my shoe. Something that's very cool, fashionable, that I can wear.
Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan represents the outer edge of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's admiration, not because Jordan mirrored Kareem's game, but because he expanded the definition of what dominance could look like without compromising winning discipline. Kareem never evaluated guards the same way he evaluated centers. His respect for Jordan wasn't rooted in positional similarity or shared technique. It came from something broader. Jordan proved that individual brilliance could coexist with absolute team accountability. That wasn't guaranteed. When Jordan entered the league in 1984, he immediately stood out as a scorer. Explosive first step, elite hang time, relentless confidence. Early in his career, critics questioned whether that style could lead to championships. Kareem watched that debate closely because he had seen this movie before. Great players often confuse capacity with control. Jordan didn't. What Kareem respected most was how Jordan evolved. He didn't abandon scoring. He refined its purpose. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Jordan had learned when to attack, when to draw defenders, and when to trust structure. Under Phil Jackson's system, Jordan committed to spacing, ball movement, and defensive responsibility without dulling his edge. That balance mattered deeply to Kareem. Jordan didn't chase numbers at the expense of outcomes. His scoring peaks aligned with championships, not distraction. From 1991 to 1993, Jordan led the Bulls to 3 titles while anchoring perimeter defense and accepting system constraints that many superstars resist. Kareem valued that restraint more than any highlight. Defensively, Jordan earned Kareem's respect as well. Jordan wasn't just a scorer who survived on defense. He was a defensive player of the year, a consistent on-ball stopper, and a disruptor in passing lanes. Kareem believed true greatness required two-way commitment, especially in postseason basketball, where weaknesses are hunted. Jordan offered none. Kareem also appreciated Jordan's mental clarity under pressure. In final settings, Jordan didn't speed up. He didn't hunt moments. He allowed the game to come to him, then imposed himself with precision. Game-winning shot, timely assists, defensive stands, all executed without panic. That composure aligned with Kareem's belief that championship basketball is about decision-making under stress, not emotion. There was also a cultural respect Kareem held quietly. Jordan carried the league into a global era while maintaining obsessive, competitive standards. He didn't dilute preparation for popularity. He didn't allow marketing to soften expectations. Kareem, who had navigated public scrutiny and cultural responsibility throughout his own career, recognized how difficult that balance was. Importantly, Kareem never framed Jordan as flawless. He understood Jordan's intensity could be harsh. He knew leadership came with friction. But Kareem judged players by whether their methods produced sustained excellence without eroding structure. Jordan passed that test repeatedly. When Kareem speaks about players he admired most, he looks for those who mastered responsibility at scale, players who could dominate while carrying the weight of expectation, teammates, and legacy. Jordan did that better than anyone of his era. To Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan wasn't just the best scorer or the most famous player. He was proof that relentless ambition could be paired with discipline, that greatness didn't have to fracture teams to elevate itself. That synthesis is R-A-R-E, and that's why Jordan earns his place at the end of this list, not as a contrast to Kareem's ideals, but as their most powerful expression in a different form. And if this list shows anything, it's that greatness isn't just about dominance. It's about understanding the game at its deepest level.
It's pay it forward. I have an obligation to the game of basketball, not financially.
If you want to hear how that standard looks through the eyes of the players who faced it, check out our next video, when NBA players were asked how good Bill Russell really was. Their answers say more than any stat ever could.